right, Kim. Well, it was great to learn little bit more about you. Now we're going to move into the case portion of the interview. And let me just tell you a little bit about our client today. Our client is in the mining industry. They've just purchased a mountain. They purchased the property rights to a mountain, and this mountain has really high concentrations of a valuable metal ore. Now, this mountain is made up of an unusually hard type of rock, and none of the commercially available drills are able to penetrate the mountain's surface. But our client's engineers have built a prototype of a drill that could be used to extract the metal from the mountain. The client's really not sure about whether or not to manufacture the drill in-house and has doubts regarding the profitability of mining at the mountain at all. So how might we help the client think through this issue?
All right. Great. So let me just reiterate what I heard, just to make sure that I'm on the same page. So our company is a mining company who has purchased a mountain. Very interesting there. And they are looking to extract this type of valuable metal ore. However, the problem that they're facing is that it's a really, really hard rock, and currently no drills on the market actually can break this type of rock. So what they've done is they've developed a prototype of a drill that would allow them to drill through this rock and extract the metal ore. But they're not sure about whether or not they should manufacture it, and they are kind of unsure about the profit in mining this mountain altogether. So they would like our help in figuring out whether or not this mountain is profitable and they should go ahead with the drill. Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. So just a few clarifying questions. So do we have any more information about like the extraction process other than just the fact that we're drilling into a mountain? Do we have any more information about that?
I think that, we would just consider this to be a standard mining operation. Obviously, they have to utilize these drills to be able to, break down the mountain into smaller pieces and then transport the valuable pieces of ore away from the mountain. And so it really just becomes about, do we have that right drilling technology to be able to then cart off the valuable pieces for process and sale.
Okay. All right, great. And essentially they just their business model is they just get a market set price for the valuable ore. Is that correct?
Yes. And we would expect probably that the price of ore would fluctuate somewhat as would any other, kind of commodity. But we do know that the particular type of metal ore in this mountain is rather valuable and higher priced on the market.
Okay, cool. All right. So, and then I guess my last question would just be, do we have any kind of time frame or profitability goals that we are looking to reach with this project here?
Yeah, we don't know from the client of any necessary timing constraints. And of course, I think that they want to look at the overall balance of the profitability equation and whether or not it would be valuable to move forward in this direction.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. All right, so I think I have a good idea of what we're looking at here. Do you mind if I just take a moment to put together some thoughts?
Okay, go ahead.
Great. All right. I think I've come up with a bit of a framework with which we can address this question of whether or not the mountain is actually profitable and whether or not they should build the drill. So there are 4 areas that I want to look at. So I'd want to look at essentially the price. And then I'd want to look at the volume of the price of the ore, the volume of the ore. I'd want to look at the costs of the business. So both the variable costs of the business and the fixed costs of the business. So within the price category, I'd want to look at just take a quick look at the market overall and the market price and how that fluctuates. Then I'd want to look at kind of our company's current share within that area or that ore. And I'd want to look at the demand for the ore. I'd want to also look at the customer, customer negotiation. So that's in with the demand. And I'd want to look at see if there's any competitors in the space and whether or not the competitors are priced in the same way. So then I'd want to look at the volume that we actually, my second area would be the volume that we actually can extract. So what kind of models have we come up with? Like, are we able to estimate what kind of volume we would be able to extract? Are there different areas that are easier to extract, or some that maybe are hidden underneath more of that hard rock? So I'd want to look at that kind of thing. I'd also want to look at what good we are at actually selling it. So what are our market channels, or what are our distribution channels? What's our marketing? And look at just maybe how we do that in comparison to the competitor. And then I'd want to look at the variable costs. So essentially, I'd want to look at the kind of variable labor that we have to pay for. I'd want to look at our costs to actually distribute and sell the ore. I'd want to look at the investment that we would need in order to make this drill. And maybe also the investment that we would need in order to set up the facility at the mountain. And then, of course, I'd want to look at some of the fixed costs. So just our business operation expenses, any kind of rents or utilities that we're using on a regular basis, any kind of labor that's a fixed cost, so maybe management salaries, etc. And I'd want to look at the maybe machinery that we already possess that has some sort of maintenance cost, anything like that. So those are the different areas that I would investigate in order to come up with an idea of whether or not this market was profitable, or this mountain, was profitable enough in order to extract the ore, and whether or not we should go ahead with building this new drill. So essentially, my hypothesis here is that if this drill is efficient, then we should definitely go ahead with extracting this ore from the mountain.
Okay. So to that end, what would you like to look at?
So I think what I would first like to look at is the price. So what is the price that we can actually get for the ore that we are extracting, and see how that plays out within the market for that ore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So based on our analysis of the market, we believe that for every ton of ore extracted, the client will realize $325 in revenue.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. So if we have that kind of information, do we have any kind of information? Do we know anything about whether the customer or the competition makes a certain amount? Is this like a market set price, or do we have any information on what the competition is doing?
In terms of competition, we know that the annual U.S. production is 64,000 tons. And we believe right now in the market, everyone is commanding the same price in the market.
Okay. U.S. production. So 64,000 tons. Great. So essentially, do we have, I think now that we know kind of what pricing we can get and the market for this, do we have any information on like expected volumes that we can actually extract from this?
Yeah, we do. First, we know that for various logistical reasons, including transportation, we need to cap our annual extraction to a maximum of 12,000 tons. The client also is concerned about flooding the market. And so, they've looked at the annual U.S. production, and they've decided that they want to cap annual extraction based on the following schedule. So they've actually kind of charted out and laid out that in years 1 through 5, they would like to keep it to 10% of the total U.S. production. In years 6 through 10, they'd like to keep it to 15% of total U.S. production. Years 10 through 15 at 20%. And years 15 through 20 at 25%. And the current plans are the client would like to extract ore from the mine for 20 years from the date that drilling starts. And after that point, we'd expect that the mine's going to be retired with no salvage value.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. So I think with this information that I have, I could calculate out the potential revenue that we might be able to make. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that unless you'd like to go down a different path.
Well, as a part of that too, one thing I want you to keep in mind is we could certainly, we could manufacture the drills in-house. We could also outsource production. And so curious how you might help the client think about that piece.
Okay, great. Okay, so we could manufacture in-house, or we could outsource the manufacturing. Okay, so yeah, that's an interesting idea there. So in-house versus outsource. Okay, great. So I think like we could have. I think there's a few different things that we should look at in here. So obviously cost is one of them. Another one is going to be like efficiency of the building process. And then I think there's possibly also like shipping, getting it actually back to the US. So there's a few different areas that we would want to look at there. So within the cost, we just want to obviously compare how much it's going to actually cost us in labor and materials and engineering in order to actually produce this, and what kind of timeline we're looking at. And then I think within outsourcing, obviously we might be able to get that at a lower cost because of labor costs. Obviously in other nations we can capitalize on that. I think that as far as efficiency goes, there's kind of two ways we can look at efficiency here. So in-house, we would have total control. We would be able to make sure that it's up to all of our standards, and we wouldn't have to worry about any kind of shipping or logistics or importing fees or regulations or anything like that. So there is a bit of a pull toward making it in-house as far as like the efficiency of actually making the drill. So however, I would say outsourcing it they might have a plant that's actually used to building drills and might only need to tweak something. So it would be really worth our while to investigate like what kind of plants or what kind of companies can actually build this, and if they have that expertise. So that would be a good thing to look at as far as outsourcing, because maybe it would take away a bit of the inefficiencies that we might encounter with outsourcing. And then I think like looking at more of the logistical part of it. So looking at how we're going to get that drill to the mountain. I think if we're building it in the US, it's going to be a little bit easier. We would just have to, ship it there with our trucks and get it to the mountain. Whereas importing it from somewhere else might have different repercussions on, say, it might end up costing us a lot more for some sort of government import fee. It might be stopped because of regulations or slowed down because of regulations. So it might have a little bit of an impact on the time that we start the actual drilling process. So I think all in all, these things are really good things to consider in order to go if we're going to build it in-house or if we're going to outsource. I think really the first thing that we would need to look at there is what kind of cost savings could we achieve if we do outsource versus if we build it in the US.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so where specifically, what specifically would you want to know there?
So I'd want to, I guess I'd want to know the material costs. I'd want to know the labor costs if we're going to do it in the US. And then I'd want to know for outsourcing, I just want to know like the overall fee for this the fee that the company will charge us in order to build it, and then also maybe regulatory fees or import fees. And I think that once we have those different things, we can take a look and then move forward to look at efficiency to see if any kind of cost savings would be offset by efficiency.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In addition to the difference in variable costs, fixed costs, labor costs between the drills, can you imagine anything else that you'd want to understand to evaluate the difference there?
Anything I would want to understand to evaluate the difference other than cost? I think maybe quality of the production. So if we build it in-house, are we going to be able to keep it up to standards and make it so that maintenance fees are lower versus if we outsource? I think we could also, it might also be more benefit for us to have the expertise in-house. So if this is like a brand new drill, having people that have actually built it and worked on it, when it does break down, we might be able to we might be able to fix it faster because we won't have to search for some sort of we won't have to search for expertise to come in and build it. We would have that expertise in-house. I think that's pretty much what I would look at the moment as far as this goes.
Okay. Yeah. I think hitting on that quality bucket is really important. And so one thing that we have found by trying to start to chart this out is that if we manufacture the drills in-house, each drill is going to have a usable life of 4 years. Whereas if we outsource the drill production, the manufacturer estimates only a 2.5-year lifespan for the drills at the given rate of mining. And then we do have some of that cost data as well. So if we manufacture the drills in-house, there's going to be a $30 million US dollars fixed setup cost and a variable cost of $100,000 per drill. If we outsource drill production, then each drill is going to cost us $250,000, but there won't be any setup cost. Now, the mine in general, regardless of the drill used, we expect the labor costs to be the same. The overall cost of operating the mine is going to be $1 million per year. And so, given all of this, the client's really interested in our perspective on which option is more profitable and whether or not they should move forward.
All right, great. Okay, so we have that lifespan of 4 years if we do it in-house and a lifespan of 2.5 if we outsource. However, the cost is quite significantly higher if we build it in-house. So we're looking at a $30 million fixed cost investment fee and then an extra $100,000 per drill. And whereas if we outsource it, it is really going to be only $250,000. I'm guessing that $250,000 is per drill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, and our overall costs, apart from that, from running the mine, is $1 million per year. Okay. So I think that definitely this is an area we can look at, because if we have 20 years of running the mine, it might, just right off the bat, it looks like it's much better idea to go with the outsourcing. However, because it is 20 years that we expect to run the mine, and we're extracting significantly more as we go through the years, I think that we might want to look at that in order to see kind of what the break-even point is and what the overall profit over the 20 years is going to be. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to calculate out the overall profit for the in-house drill manufacturer and then for the outsourced drill manufacturer. All right. So okay. In order to... Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to look at the extraction and figure out what the overall revenue is. And then I'll compare the cost in there. So our extraction capabilities are, so we have annual extraction of 12,000 tons at the moment. And then the annual, okay, so 64. All right, so we are going to do, so the first through fifth year. So the first segment, we've got the second segment, and then we've got a third segment and a fourth. So we're going to have 10% of the U.S. annual production, and we've got 64,000 tons. So I just would like to clarify something here. So we are going to cap our annual cap at 12,000 tons. However, is that just for the first year, and then the cap extraction, the 10% of the 64,000 tons starts in the second year, or where do those numbers compare?
Mm-hmm. So we are logistically constrained. We're never going to go above 12,000 tons per year of extraction. However, separately, the client would like to cap the extraction based on the schedule shared compared to the aggregate total U.S. production.
Okay. So the 12,000 tons it's a like regulatory cap.
Yeah, based on our constraints for transportation and other logistical challenges, we're not going to be able to extract more than 12,000 tons a year.
Okay. Okay, great. So that's but the number that we are really wanting to get to is the 10% of the US market. Okay. So 10% of the US market for the first 5 years is going to be 6,400 tons.
How might you think about that when you go ahead and include our production into that total aggregate U.S. number? Certainly our competitors aren't going to produce less just because we've started extracting ore. So we want to maintain our cap that when we want to take our production into account as well.
Okay. All right. So I'm just wondering then here. So our annual production, or the annual U.S. production, is 64,000 tons, and we don't want to flood the market. So what we have decided, like what we've scheduled, is that the cap extraction is for the first 5 years 10% of the U.S. Market, and for the second 5 years 15%, for the third 5 years 20%, and for the last 5 years it's 25% of the U.S. market. So based on that. But we can't ever actually go over 12,000 tons.
Correct.
Okay. So sorry, could you repeat your question that you just asked about how the competitors are involved in this?
Yeah. So once we start producing this ore as well, it's going to raise the overall U.S. production number. Okay. So we want our extraction to be 10% of that new total U.S. production because we're adding to that total.
Okay, I see. Okay. I see what you're saying here. So if we want to do 10% of 10%, so we want to do 10% plus 64,000 is going to equal a new number, a new total market. Okay, new market. All right, so in order to do that, I'm just going to say that x minus 0.1 is equal to 64,000.
So what is x in your formula?
So that's going to be our new total market.
Okay. Yep. And then if the new total aggregate market U.S. production is X, then what's your formula that you have laid out there?
Then I would say if the new total aggregate market is X minus 0.1, so that's X minus the 10%, is equal to 64,000.
Okay. I don't think that that's going to help get us there. What if we start over? What if you had X? What if you had X be our client's annual production?
Okay. If X is our client's annual production, then that's going to equal so if X is our annual if our client's annual production plus the 64,000 is going to equal a new total.
And what would be that new total?
Well, the new total would be 64,000 plus 10% of 64,000.
64,000 is the old U.S. total. The new U.S. total is
I'm just going to take a step back here and ask a couple of questions. So the 64,000, I'm with the 12,000 tons. We're not meaning the 12,000 tons as the increase of the market, are we?
Nope, that's just a logistical cap that we're never going to go above.
Great. Okay, because that's what I was thinking. So if we do 64,000 tons.
Yep, 64,000 plus X is going to equal
a new.
And what is X by definition? We've decided that the client has decided that they're never going to extract, or that they don't want to flood the market. And so they only want to produce
10% of the U.S. market.
Yeah. So the new U.S. market total in this formula would be 10X.
Okay. Okay. I'm not quite sure I understand that. So if it's 10, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
we had our old U.S. production total of 64,000. We now are going to start adding to that market. So the new U.S. total is going to increase. So on a yearly level, this new aggregate U.S. total is going to be 64,000 plus X.
Yes.
Now, what do we equate that to? How are we going to solve this algebraic equation?
Yes.
On the other side, we're defining X to be 10% of the overall market. We're capping it at that. So to balance out our equation, on the right-hand side of the equation, we could put 10X, and that will help us solve for how much we can extract annually for in years 1 through 5 to make sure that our production is 1/10 of the new total aggregate U.S. production.
Okay. So essentially, what I'd want to do is do so x plus 64,000 is equal to 10x. So if I if I move, okay, so essentially, this is actually starting to look a little bit more like a quadratic equation to me.
No, you subtract X over onto the right-hand side, so you have 9X equals 64,000.
Right.
And then we'll take 64,000 divided by 9.
Right.
And if you do that, go ahead and do that quick equation, and then we'll just talk through what the next steps would be.
Sure, great. So, so 64,000 divided by 9, that is going to be 7,000 and it's going to be approximately 7,000 because 63, 9 goes into 63 7 times. And so it's going to be a little bit more than $7,000.
Tons per year.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So
7,000 tons per year.
yeah, so if you multiplied that out, that would end up being 7,111 tons per year. We can imagine a similar kind of algebraic approach to years 6 through 10, 11 through 15, and 16 through 20. We're not going to be able to get the chance to go through and look at the full profitability equation. But Kim, based on what you know right now, what would you recommend to the client?
So based on what I know right now, so we've got 7,000 tons, 7,000 tons per year times 325. So that's going to be approximately 21 or 2.1 million per year. At least for the first 5 years. And then our drill cost. So I think just basically based on that, I think it's probably better to outsource our drill manufacturing, because we are going to hit so basically every 5 years we're going to have to spend 500,000. So that's essentially going to be 2 million in cost for the drills over the span of the mine. So that is going to be a lot less. 2 million is going to be a lot less than the 30 million that we are going to input into building our own drill. So based on that, I'm thinking that the outsourcing the drill is the way to go, and that we would probably bring in the most profit, because we are not investing in building that drill. So we're going to be saving a lot of the revenue that we make from the mine over the span of the 20 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kim. All right. We end it there. How do you feel?
I obviously went really slow. I'm not really sure how I can speed that up, and I think I have been, math is my weak point, and I have been trying to work on that a lot, but I think maybe I took too long in trying to discuss more of the creative question than actually getting into the math. But yeah, obviously it didn't go that well because you had to stop me. Yeah.
You're right. We did not get through the case. Now, with that being said, you at this point had all the information to be able to do the calculations and to be able to walk through that. For everybody that's following along, if you we're doing the same thing, or if you kind of go back and want to do this math later, what we come to is the total revenue from mining activities is going to be $68.9 million per year. And then we can compare that against the two different costs for manufacturing the drills in-house versus outsourcing. And manufacturing the drills in-house comes to $60.6 million a year. Outsourcing comes to $73 million. And so it turns out when we do all the math that in-house manufacturing makes sense, yet then we can also step back and say, well, gosh, but the profit margin really isn't very large. We have to assess whether or not profitability of $8 million, over 30 years, if that's going to be something that is, excuse me, that this is total revenue and total cost. Those weren't yearly numbers. So if a total profit of $8 million over 30 years is actually a type of business that is meaningful to us. Granted, they've already bought the mountain, and so they already have the rights there, but there are probable other challenges, hurdles, costs that could come about as a part of this overall equation. So $8 million over 30 years, maybe not that attractive. So you can go ahead and go back and do the math and see, try and come to those answers, come to those numbers. So A Bain-style case, right? A couple things that we want to keep in mind. Practicality and applicability is paramount. So I'm really looking at and thinking through that lens when you first go through your initial structure. I'm thinking, okay, you set out for me 3 categories: price, volume, and cost. Can I imagine, do I think that that's a practical and applicable solution to have a team of 3 analysts or associates with each person owning that work stream? As you went through it, not quite. There were some holes and gaps there. There was a little bit of overlap, I felt. And when you talked through it, I felt like once you talked through all the content, that you had actually talked through the buckets of market, revenue, cost, and sales and distribution, perhaps. I mean, there could be a different way we could categorize that as well. But that would probably have been a bit of a more MECE approach and would have had more applicability, practicality to the real world. Then when, no Bain interviewer is going to sit there and time you individually on each separate mechanic and, piece of the case, but they are going to step back and they're going to say, how well did you manage your time overall? How well did you manage through the conversation and through the process? And so to be able to analyze that more fully, we can look at the individual pieces. You did keep your recap was a full minute, and then the recap plus the questions that you asked ended up totaling over 3 minutes. I counted about 3 minutes and 10 seconds, and so it took a while to get to the structuring. You took only slightly over 2 minutes, 2 minutes 12 seconds for the structure, but then 3 minutes and 45 seconds roughly to talk through the structure. So again, a kind of a Bain-style and approach. We're going to take a step back and kind of look holistically about how the whole thing felt. And so I do think that it felt slow and that you lost time, but it wasn't necessarily due just to the creative question. It was not drilling to the insights, recommendations fast enough in each of the individual pieces. Then you started to get the revenue information and you wanted to dive into some math. I hadn't given you quite all the information and I pulled you back out towards a creative question. You started talking through cost. That was quite a long answer. I did feel like there was a lack of structure there in the way that you were talking through the different things. And then as you walked through your cost bucket, and then it was a lot about production of the drill. You ended up talking about shipping and import costs as well. It seemed like you ended up having a second bucket around production. And then we got to that quality aspect right after a prompt, which was a good segue to be able to share the rest of the information and data with you. Now, with all that being said, I did think that you had really good poise and enthusiasm. I mean, that's something that's looked for, at Bain, they're going to have to teach you the ins and outs about the industry and the specificity of the job, but I need to want to work with you. I need to believe that you're going to be a positive influence and energy on the team and to the client. And so I thought even when you went through a challenging case with tough math and didn't get there fully, that you stayed really pretty composed in all of that. And I think that you did really well. Gonna have to continue to sharpen and shape up the math piece there. It was another layer and level of complexity to bring in, some algebra into the process, but definitely something within the realm of what would be expected for you to process and compute through. If you had gone through it, you then would be able to see in segment 3 and 4, as you defined them, it would have been above the cap of 12,000. And so we would have been able to go ahead and say, okay, the number for segment 3 is just going to be 12,000. The number for segment 4 is just going to be 12,000, which would help us speed up the overall process there a little bit towards the end, to be able to identify that and not have to go through the full detailed calculation of the algebra. We were in a situation where our time had run out. We weren't going to be able to get through the full case. I prompted you for a recommendation. If that happens to you, then you want to lean really hard into next steps. Well, these are the things that I would want to think about next. Here's where I would want to calculate next, because that's going to give us the answer. The reality is that without doing the calculations, you still weren't weren't speaking from an informed place to be able to be concrete about, yes, I think outsourcing is the solution. And frankly, once we did the math, it turned out that in-house manufacturing was truly the solution. Yet you can lean into, well, to make this decision, we're going to have to finish the profitability calculation. I'm going to want to calculate A, B, and C. That's really what's going to help us identify which one of these solutions is going to make sense. And that's what the client will need to do as next steps moving forward to be able to find a solution and get to that recommendation.